Parents, what's something your kid has done that you pretended to be angry about but secretly impressed or amused you? Story 1. Oh God, the stories I could tell about my niece. When she was young, she was visiting my parents and my dad took her for a drive. Some guy cut him off in traffic, so he yelled out the window. About a block ahead, still behind the guy, he's almost through the intersection when he hears the back window roll down. A few seconds later, my niece stuck her fist out the window, started shaking it at the car ahead, and screamed at the car as loud as she could, copying what my dad said. Classy, Dad. Around the same time, she was hanging out at my parents' house. She stays with them for a couple of weeks every summer, and my sister wonders why she's so outspoken. The kid was drinking milk like she was part cow. Seriously, she wouldn't drink anything else. My mom, being the all-knowing grandmother, says she can't have any more milk until she has a glass of juice, a glass of water, or something. Mom leaves the room for a few minutes, figuring that since the niece can't reach the milk, she'll probably ask for juice or pop next. She comes back into bed, and there's my niece on the couch with a big glass of milk, hanging out with my dad. Mom tells her, "I thought I said you couldn't have any more milk. Did you go into the fridge?" "No." "Well, how did you get that glass of milk that I said you couldn't have?" Niece looks her dead in the eyes and says, "Because Grandpa's a sucker." Another time we were driving around my niece, she was in kindergarten. Me and my sister were just talking about whatever, and all of a sudden there was a break in the conversation. My niece pipes up, "Mom, when are you going to leave me?" My sister doesn't miss a beat and says, "Honey, I'm going to live long enough to make your life miserable until you can take care of me. How's that?" The niece is totally happy with that answer. "That's fine because I love you, Mommy." A few seconds later, I decide to ask if she's going to take care of anyone else. "Yep, I'm going to take care of Grandpa because I love him too." "Well, what about me? Well, take care of me." "You can go live in a closet, Auntie." The scary thing is that people say she takes after me. I must have been a real a-hole as a kid. This kid is going to be legendary someday. Story 2. When my son was fairly young, he got his first pair of eyeglasses. Initially, he resisted wearing them until he realized he could see properly for the first time in his life. A few days into sporting his new glasses, I bought home a 5-pound bag of individually wrapped chocolates that I intended to take to the office. He had gone upstairs to his toy room and was unusually quiet for too long. When I went up, I found him surrounded by wrappers covered in chocolate. Half the bag was gone, and he was so proud of himself. "Mommy, I don't need help to open them, so I don't have to ask." It was the first time he could see where to pull to open the wrappers. I was so happy that he could finally see that I couldn't be angry. I had to explain to him that he still needed to ask permission to take the candy even if he didn't need help opening it anymore. The punishment was his bellyache. It turns out that our son had become lactose intolerant after his first ear infection and a round of antibiotics. The doctor warned us about an upset stomach, so we didn't think much of it the first 10 days. He was 7 months old, mostly on a milk-based diet, and the constant trots never stopped. Eventually, they figured it was lactose intolerance, possibly due to the antibiotics messing with his gut flora. Story 3. So I have twins. The boy is your typical kid, and the girl is developmentally delayed due to autism and struggling with communication. Here's the morning routine. If he wakes up first, he just yells for us to let him out of the room. If she's an early riser, she sits quietly until someone comes in. No, we're not locking our kids in, we just close the door. The boy can open it in his own, even for bathroom trips, though he still insists on waking us up for that. Classic. Now the girl can't open the door, and she's not potty trained. Safety first, right? But let's talk about their third birthday. They got some awesome toys in the living room, not in their room, to avoid bedtime distractions. The next morning, she wakes up wanting to play with her new dolls but doesn't know how to get our attention. However, she's observed that her brother can open the door, so she grabs a Nerf hammer, Thor's from Avengers, and charges her brother with it. His cries brought me running into the room. The moment I open the door, she drops the hammer and runs past me laughing, straight to her new toys. Maybe a bit sociopathic, but you've got to admire the cleverness, right? Story 4. My son has this habit of dropping periodic swears, but only in the most appropriate ways. Case in point, we were reading The Two Towers from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. After finishing the chapter on the fall of Isengard, he casually comments, "Wow, Saruman is an a-hole." I mean, he's not wrong, but the first time he did it was when he was younger. A piece of chicken fell off his fork during lunch and he goes, "Damn it!" I had to explain that it was inappropriate to use that word at his age, but it's still impressive. Now I'm way more careful about swearing in front of him, especially when driving. Fast forward to about a year after that. We were on the road behind a minivan playing this slowing down, speeding up game. He looks at me and says, "Daddy, can I say a bad word?" I tell him he shouldn't, but I'm curious. He leans over, points at the van ahead, and goes, "That guy's an a-hole." 2 people have asked him recently about how he got so smart. His responses have been, "I just know a lot of things, and because I'm a genius." Story 5. So my brother learned to speak during an election year. My father's not-so-happy views on politics made dinner conversations quite loaded. Swear phrases were tossed around regularly. One afternoon, when my mother tried to discipline my brother, he puts his hands on his hips, looked her dead in the eye, and hissed, "You." My mother gave him a pretty good time out, and after closing the door, she had to run outside so she could have a good laugh. I think she also mentioned that when my father got home from work that night, she might have given him a piece of her mind too, maybe even a figurative clocking in the mouth. Story 6. One night, my wife and I were having a serious discussion with our 10-year-old daughter about the importance of homework, education, and her future. The topic surfaced because she got caught lying about her grades. I asked her, "Don't you want to grow up and be successful like me?" To my surprise, her response was, "Mom doesn't do anything and she's got it pretty good." My wife was left speechless. There I was, defending the fort as best as I could without cracking a smile. Luckily, she was just being a smart aleck. It turns out she's set on colonizing Mars. Despite the argument, she's such a smart kid with these grand aspirations. Story 7. My son called me into his room because he swore there was a monster in his closet. I, thinking he's too old for that kind of thing, told him to go back to sleep. However, he pleaded with me to check it out. Reluctantly, I opened the door and turned on the light, only to be greeted by some scruffy-looking thing with angry eyes, and of course, I screamed. It turns out, it was just a mirror. I'm standing there trying to figure out if I'm having a heart attack, and he's in fits of laughter, trolling me. I couldn't help but be proud of his cleverness, but for a moment, I considered if he was too old to be left on someone's doorstep. Story 8. So my stepkid had a little beef with his father. One time he asked me what I did at work all day, and I told him. Then he turns to my significant other and goes, "Daddy, I know you didn't do anything at work, so I don't need to ask." Trying not to laugh, I say, "Dude, Daddy runs a business and works really hard." The kid fires back, "Oh, he just watched YouTube all day." And there's this other gem. My significant other tells the kid he has to listen because he's the boss. The kid, with a straight face, goes, "No, you're not the boss, I am." I died. Story 9. So back in 6th grade, my son got detention and almost got suspended for running a jawbreaker black market among the kids. His sweet racket only crumbled because some 8th grader ratted him out. All because my son wouldn't share the candy for free and the older kid couldn't take it by force. The school tried to confiscate the jawbreakers and his hard-earned money, but we told them we'd take the confiscated stuff and just handed it back to him. They almost made off with his $40 though. No wonder my son wasn't a fan of the middle school administration. Story 10. My son and his buddies thought it would be hilarious to name their dodgeball team Snipe just to strategically line up and accidentally spell out a certain word for a man's privates on their lettered t-shirts in front of the whole school. The joys of parenting, right? Now his sister's swim team had a different idea. They wanted t-shirts with the motto, "We go in hard, we come out wet." Needless to say, the principal swiftly shot down that creative endeavor. I was such a proud mom. Sounds like a good idea. Maybe I'll rename our Discord room. Being a parent must be one of the toughest jobs because kids do and say the darnest things. If you enjoy watching stories about kids and their crazy antics, check out my channel. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to check out my other videos. Story 11. In 6th grade, my daughter befriended a boy with feminine characteristics. It all started because of the school rule that dictated they had to remain at their assigned tables on the first day. This boy, sitting alone at the end of their table, eventually became part of their group. While many were accepting of his choice to wear pink clothes and nail polish, sadly, not everyone was. One day I received a call from the disciplinary superintendent at the school. He began with a disclaimer, stating he had to report any situation involving physical actions but wasn't encouraging any punitive action on my part. He then explained that one of the boys, known for tormenting her friend, had pushed him. In response, my daughter, fueled by anger, ran up to the boy and kicked him. She did have to apologize to the boy, and we had to talk about not resorting to physical actions, no matter how upset we might be. Still, I couldn't help but feel immensely proud of her for standing up and defending her friend. Story 12. I went to Walmart with my boys and some guy nearly backed over us in the parking lot. It was bad. My stepson was looking elsewhere and my hands were full of the baby, so I basically smashed him in the chest with a diaper bag to stop his forward movement. As he's recovering his balance and realizing what happened, this guy's just staring at us like we materialized out of nowhere. My stepson plants his feet and flips into double bird. He was completely calm and confident and made full eye contact and held it up there for a good 3 seconds. The kiddo is normally shy around adults. It was like seeing a glimpse of the man he was going to become. Story 13. My son has a protective streak. He closes fists if they touch his baby sister. Will I intervene and lightly punish him? Deep down, I can't help but feel it's kind of his job. After all, my big brother flattened kids who were mean to me. That's what big brothers do. One incident that stood out was when my nephew tried to hurt my daughter with a toy drill, and my son just launched out of his chair and thumped him. Secretly, I felt a little proud even though I didn't like my nephew being hurt. I stopped the behavior and generally explained to him and passively to the other child, a parent, "I know you don't like it when people touch your sister and you're just trying to stand up for her, but I'm right here and I can look after her. You need to play nicely." He is welcome to look after her when I'm not around and or she wants or needs to be looked after, but while he is too young to fully interpret the situation, it is open-endedly stopped. Story 14. When my daughter was younger, there was a boy in school who constantly picked on her. One day, he confronted her in front of his buddies, challenging her with, "I bet you don't have the nerve to kick me." Well, she did. We received a call from the school, and while talking to the principal, my ex and I had to stifle laughter. I'm pretty sure the principal, teacher, and secretaries were laughing just as hard. It was just as difficult for the principal to stifle her laughter as it was for us. Once outside, we couldn't contain it any longer, but we had to rein it in when we met up with her daughter. The interesting part? The kid who was bullying her left her alone after that. Story 15. I blocked YouTube and iPad, concerned that my 5-year-old might stumble upon content not suitable for his age. To my surprise, he found a clever workaround. He started up Angry Birds, clicked on Angry Birds cartoons, and then navigated to his favorite YouTuber using the voice search function. I have to say, that's brighter than most adults I've seen. He adeptly dealt with bypassing password protection and utilized the speech function due to his own inability to write. That's amazing. The thing with kids and electronics is that they have hours to explore all possibilities, and there's no good reason not to. Watching my son play video games has changed my perception. Given enough time, they can figure almost anything out. I'm more amused that the kid already has a favorite YouTuber. Story 16. When I was young, my mom was getting hardwood floors put in. Apparently, the carpenter was making too much noise because I walked out of my room, put my hands on my hips, and asked, "What is going on with all this noise?" He stopped his mid-hammer swing. My mom turned and stared at me. "What did you say?" she asked. I sighed as though this conversation were beneath me. Then I said, "What is going on with all this noise?" She explained to me that there are things we don't say and sent me back to my room. Years later, she told me that she was actually impressed that I had used the word correctly. Story 17. Stick Wars. 3rd grade Stick Wars. The school had a strict policy against pretending to use weapons and playing soldiers, but my son was passionate about the military. The school was undergoing landscape renovations, with giant dirt piles just off the playground. Undeterred by the rules, my son initiated war games. They found stakes resembling firearms, assigned ranks to various kids, corporals, majors, and so on, and went on patrols. The 1st graders wanted to join, but they were deemed too little. Meanwhile, the 5th graders started picking on them. My son, now a colonel, had had enough. He recruited 1st graders, put them through boot camp, and staged a raid on the 5th graders. Leading a patrol directly into the 5th grade territory, my son yelled, "Attack!" Suddenly, the 5th graders found themselves flanked by tons of kids hiding behind dirt piles. Dirt clouds flew. A big meeting ensued, where my son explained all the details in front of the principal. It was so hard not to laugh. Story 18. I have 2 stories to share. My son loves the zoo and wants to go every day. Not sharing the same enthusiasm, I suggested going to the park near the zoo as it was a cost-free alternative. I also mentioned wanting to get coffee first. His response, "Oh, so you have money for coffee." I was impressed by his very appropriate and timely comeback. The truth is, I had money for both the zoo and coffee. The challenge is that my kids tend to want to leave the zoo after approximately 8 minutes, but still insists on going every single day. Spending $40 to exit the zoo after 8 minutes is my idea of a great time. In a past era where it was legal, my mom sent my sister to the store for cigarettes. As a treat, my sister asked if she could buy herself something sweet, to which my mom responded that there was no money for that. That's when my sister hit her with, "How come you have enough money for cigarettes but not enough to buy your daughter a treat?" It struck my mother deeply, and she hasn't smoked since, almost 30 years later. Story 19. During a wrestling match with my nephew, once he had me pinned, it turned into a round of name-calling. With gems like stupid face and dumb head, my sister chimed in, "Don't call me names!" Then, without missing a beat, the boy looks at me and says, "Names." Literally, he just called me names. The punk. On another occasion, he demanded that my mother give him some chocolate. Her response was, "Ask nicely." With a most serious yet annoyed face, he looked her in the eyes and said, "Well, where's nicely?" This kid is going to be a great dad someday, since he's already mastered the art of dad jokes. Story 20. I may not have given birth to them, but for the past 10 years, I've raised my 2 nephews as my own. Now almost 25, I've witnessed their incredible scientific endeavors. My oldest built a rocket from fireworks and remote control car parts, successfully launched it into a cornfield for a junior high science fair, which attracted the principal's attention with homemade fart bombs. Countless Rube Goldberg machines followed, leaving my kitchen, my husband's study, and my workshop in various states of disarray. Then there's my youngest, with his multiple baking soda volcanoes and inventive ideas. From a remote helicopter flying fox bat to passing out Harry Potter jelly beans at school on test days, these boys are true little scientists. Despite the chaos, I really love my boys. Story 21. Not a parent, but on a related note, as a very, very young kid, I discovered my dad's razor blades and, not understanding what they were, ended up hurting my fingers. Quite a lot. Running to my dad in tears, he had warned me earlier in the day not to go into his bathroom cabinet, so he suspected what I'd done. Realizing I'd probably get in trouble, I told him I hurt my fingers on my trouser buttons. I vividly remember him turning to my mom, me looking guilty, and raising my fingers for him to see. In that wheezy tone of voice, somebody trying not to laugh, he says, "Do you hear that, kid? She says she cut them on buttons." Story 22. Not my kid, but in my younger days. When I was a child, my family and I used to watch a Scottish sketch show called Chewin' the Fat. The day after a new episode had aired, I was eager to use one of my favorite lines from the show. It was coming up for nap time at the nursery, and the teachers were instructing everyone to put away their toys and tidy up. I, however, didn't want to tidy up. The teachers, not pleased with my reluctance, warned that if I did help, my favorite toy, a transforming Greymon, would be taken away for the day. Taken aback by such an unforgiving threat, I saw my opportunity to use my favorite line. Parents were called in and my mother was not pleased. However, my dad had to leave the room and she told him because he couldn't hold in the laughter. In the end, he bought me a toy metal Garurumon. Story 23. Okay, so not my kid, but my significantly younger sibling. When she was a young toddler, our family was out to dinner and she accidentally dropped her fork in the ground. In a reflex undoubtedly picked up from my mom, she shouted out, "Crap!" Clearly, the entire restaurant heard her. My mom was mortified and immediately tried to repair the situation. No, baby, that's not what we say. What do we say?" She responded, hoping for an uh-oh or an oops or maybe even a sorry. However, my sister took a moment to think this one through. She dug deep into a recollection of what mommy would say in that situation and responded with a clear and resounding, "Mofo!" I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. Parents, what's the funniest reason you've been called into school to get your kid? Story 4 is hilarious. See you in that video.